Have you ever noticed how you can spend like an hour researching a major purchase,
Oh, easily.
right? Comparing specifications, reading countless reviews, trying to make the absolute most logical choice possible.
Yeah, you want to get it exactly right.
Exactly. But then you walk into a coffee shop and you completely impulsively buy a pastry just because it was sitting next to the register.
Yep, happens every time.
It's so funny because we like to think we're perfectly rational actors, carefully calculating the pros and cons of everything we do.
Oh,
But today's deep dive is into Dan Ariely's audiobook, Predictably Irrational, which is about 10 or 11 hours long, and it totally proves that the very architecture of our brain is, well, it's working against us.
it really is a fascinating journey into human behavior because if you look at the foundation of traditional economics, it's built on this very comforting, uh, almost flattering assumption.
That we're all walking supercomputers.
Pretty much the assumption that humans evaluate all available information, weigh the costs and benefits, and make decisions that maximize our own advantage.
Right. But this book completely dismantles that.
Utterly dismantles it. Human decisions are largely irrational. But the vital twist here, and the whole reason behavioral economics even exists as a field, is that our irrationality isn't chaotic.
Meaning we aren't just making random mistakes.
Right. If we were just randomly making mistakes, it would be impossible to study. But we aren't. Our mistakes follow strict, predictable patterns. And because they follow patterns, they can be studied, anticipated, and most importantly, influenced by the people and companies around us.
So to understand how our rationality breaks down so predictably, we really have to start with how our brains calculate value. I mean, we like to think we have this internal appraisal system, right?
Yeah, like a built-in calculator.
Exactly. You look at a car or a sandwich or a new house, and you think your brain is calculating its absolute intrinsic worth. But the research says our brains are actually terrible at doing that in a vacuum. We rely entirely on context. It's basically a comparison game.
The core concept here is relativity. Humans simply do not possess an internal value meter that tells us exactly what things are worth. I mean, evolution didn't wire us to look at an object and know its abstract mathematical value.
Right, because why would we need that?
Exactly. Evolution wired us to compare, like, is this fruit bigger than that fruit? Is this predator faster than that one? We are constantly looking at nearby alternatives to figure out where things stand.
And Ariely actually tested this with a brilliant example involving consumer tech. So let's say you're looking to buy a new phone, and you see one priced at 50,000 rupees.
Okay.
Now, on its own, your brain struggles. Like, is 50,000 rupees a lot for this specific combination of glass and metal? It might feel expensive.
Yeah, without context, who knows?
Right. But if the company strategically places a 90,000 rupee phone right next to it on the display table, suddenly that 50,000 rupee option doesn't look so bad.
It looks like a deal.
Exactly. It feels like an affordable, logical choice. But wait, I have to jump in here and ask about this.
Yeah.
If I know my budget for a phone is exactly 50,000 rupees, why would I care what the 90,000 rupee phone looks like? Shouldn't my logical budget just completely override that comparison?
You would think so if you were perfectly rational, but your brain isn't just checking a budget, it's seeking a feeling of certainty. The intrinsic value of the 50,000 rupee phone hasn't changed at all.
The battery life, the camera, all the same.
None of that is different. The only thing that changed was the context. By putting a premium decoy option right next to it, companies manipulate your perception of value.
Wow.
You aren't buying the 50,000 rupee phone because you calculated its true worth against your budget. You're buying it because, relative to the 90,000 rupee option, it feels like a victory. You get this psychological reward of feeling like a really smart shopper.
Okay, so we are absolutely hardwired to compare. But what happens when the thing we're comparing against is completely arbitrary? Like, this brings up another huge cognitive blind spot from the research called anchoring.
Oh, anchoring is where relativity gets truly dangerous for our wallets.
Right, because this is where the very first number you see completely hijacks your subsequent decisions.
Absolutely.
For example, if you walk into a luxury boutique and someone shows you a 100,000 rupee watch first, and then immediately presents a 40,000 rupee watch right afterward, that 40,000 rupee watch seems undeniably cheap.
It feels like a bargain.
It really does. And the crazy part is, this works even if that first number was completely irrelevant to anything you actually wanted.
It works because of a process that's actually really similar to imprinting. Just like a baby bird imprints on the first large moving object it sees, your brain kind of latches onto that initial 100,000 rupee price tag.
And just sets that as the rule.
Yes, it establishes it as the absolute baseline for what a watch should cost in that specific environment. Every subsequent price is judged against that initial anchor.
But why? I mean, we encounter thousands of decisions every single day. We obviously can't do complex math for every single one. So is looking for a baseline really a flaw, or is it just a necessary mental shortcut to save time?
It absolutely is a mental shortcut, but it becomes a massive flaw because of the real-world consequences. That initial anchor doesn't just save you a few seconds of thinking, it dictates your real financial reality, completely regardless of an item's actual value.
Wait, really? So it goes beyond just shopping?
Oh, way beyond. This anchoring effect influences massive real estate negotiations and even your salary. You might accept a significantly lower salary simply because the initial lowball number thrown out by the hiring manager served as a psychological anchor. It literally drags your perception of your own worth down with it.
Oh, wow. That is actually a little terrifying. So anchoring proves our logic is easily hijacked by numbers. But what happens when you remove the math entirely? Like, what happens when the anchor is literally zero?
That is where things get really wild.
Ariely ran an amazing experiment involving chocolate that completely exposes us here.
Yeah, the power of free. It's one of the most fascinating phenomena in behavioral economics because it doesn't just shift our logic, it completely short-circuits it.
Let me break down how he set it up. Imagine you're offered two choices. Chocolate A is a premium high-end truffle priced at 20 rupees.
Sounds good.
And chocolate B is just a standard mass-produced piece of chocolate for 5 rupees. Now, in this scenario, people behave rationally. They weigh the quality of the premium truffle against the cost, and most people choose the premium truffle because it's a really great deal for 20 rupees.
Exactly. They're doing a rational cost-benefit analysis. But then the researchers tweak the rules by just a tiny fraction. They reduce the price of both chocolates by exactly 5 rupees.
Right, so chocolate A drops from 20 rupees down to 15, and chocolate B drops from 5 rupees down to free. Now, the absolute price difference between the two is exactly the same as before. It is still a 15 rupee difference.
The math hasn't changed at all.
Logically, the calculation shouldn't change, but it does. Most people suddenly abandon the premium chocolate A and just lunge for the free standard chocolate. Even though chocolate A at 15 rupees is objectively a massive steal for a premium truffle.
It's totally irrational.
It's almost less like a computer virus and more like an emergency override switch. The concept of free seems to tap into something primal. Like, if it's free, there's zero threat, so the brain just bypasses the math department entirely and goes straight to the reward center.
That is a perfect way to describe the mechanism at play. It goes back to evolutionary psychology and a concept called loss aversion.
Loss aversion.
Right. When a transaction involves money, our brains immediately recognize a risk. We are giving up resources. And to an early human, giving up resources could literally mean starvation.
Right, that makes sense.
But when something is free, our brains perceive absolute zero risk of loss. The fear center of the brain just powers down, and we are drawn to the item irresistibly, even to our own detriment. I mean, we will stand in line for an hour to get a free cup of coffee that we could have bought for a few rupees, completely ignoring the value of our own time.
Oh, I've definitely done that. Which brings up another emotional override switch from the book, The Endowment Effect. If free makes us crazy before we own something, the endowment effect makes us crazy after we get it. Why do we suddenly overvalue what we already own?
Again, it comes back to loss aversion, but applied a bit differently here. The endowment effect shows that ownership intrinsically alters your perception of value.
The research highlights this with a concert ticket scenario. Let's say you buy a highly sought-after concert ticket for 500 rupees. Before you bought it, your logical brain decided 500 was a fair price. But the moment you purchase it, the exact second it belongs to you, its value in your brain skyrockets. If someone outside the venue asked to buy it from you, you wouldn't sell it for 500. Suddenly, it feels like it's worth 2,000.
Because once you own it, you stop focusing on the money you could gain by selling it, and you start focusing entirely on the pain of losing the experience.
So it's the pain of loss again.
Exactly. You fall in love with what you already have. We see this with everything from houses to coffee mugs, evolutionarily, holding onto your resources, hoarding what is already in your hands. That was a much safer survival strategy than trading it away.
Okay, so if our brains basically freak out over the concept of free or mine in a store setting, How does this affect us outside of shopping? Because this predictable irrationality isn't just about buying things, right? It bleeds into our personal lives.
Deeply. And this is where Ariely's research gets into how we navigate relationships. He explains that humans operate under two distinct sets of rules. It's almost like two conflicting operating systems running in our heads. We have social norms and we have market norms.
Okay, so social norms are what govern friendship, family, community, mutual aid. It's warm, it's fuzzy, and it doesn't require a ledger. Like if you have a friend who's moving to a new apartment and they ask you to come over and help carry a heavy sofa, that feels completely natural under social norms. You do it just because you're a good friend.
Precisely. Early humans needed a social norm operating system to survive. Mutual aid, like helping your neighbor without expecting immediate payment, was literal life or death for hunter-gatherer tribes.
Right.
But then you have the second system, market norms. This is a much newer, colder operating system. It governs money, contracts, transactions. It is highly analytical and strictly tit for tat.
And the chaos happens when we accidentally mix these two operating systems, doesn't it?
Oh, absolute chaos.
Let's go back to the moving example. Your friend asks you to help them move, and you say yes. But what if, right before you pick up that heavy sofa, your friend pulls out their wallet and offers you a tiny amount of cash for your heavy lifting? Say, a handful of coins or just a few rupees.
Well, under purely rational market logic, traditional economics would say a little bit of money is always better than no money at all.
Right, mathematically you're richer.
Mathematically, yes, you should be happier. But in reality, offering a tiny payment for a big favor completely damages the relationship. The friend who was totally happy to sweat for free is now deeply offended.
Because by handing me those coins, you've essentially dragged me out of the friend zone and directly into the cheap labor zone.
Exactly. You've forcefully switched the operating system from social to market. By introducing money, you rewrite the unspoken evolutionary rules of the interaction. You signal that this is no longer a community exchange based on kinship, it is a labor exchange based on market value. And when your friend realizes you are valuing their back-breaking labor at a few pennies, they feel insulted. Introducing market norms into a social situation just leads to predictable disaster.
Right.
And the scariest part?
What?
Once a social norm is broken, it is incredibly difficult to get it back.
That makes total sense, which actually perfectly explains why we feel so betrayed by corporations on social media.
Oh, that's a great point.
Like a brand will spend years using a casual, friendly voice, calling us their besties, operating entirely on social norms to build loyalty. But the second they aggressively change their terms of service or hit us with a hidden fee, we are furious. We expect friends to act like friends and businesses to act like businesses.
That's a brilliant modern application of it. The friction between those two worlds is immense.
So if we are constantly navigating these blurry lines between social rules and market rules, how do our brains justify breaking the rules altogether? Let's talk about dishonesty, because this might be the most revealing part of the whole analysis.
Dishonesty is fascinating because traditional economics would suggest that people cheat based on a cold, calculated cost-benefit analysis.
Like a criminal mastermind weighing the odds.
Right. A rational actor would ask, how much money can I gain? What is the probability of getting caught? And how severe is the punishment? If the reward outweighs the risk, you cheat to the maximum extent possible.
But the research proves that isn't how human beings actually work at all, right?
Not at all.
When given the chance, most people do not cheat as much as possible. Even when experiments are set up so that participants know for an absolute fact they will not get caught, they don't maximize their illicit gains.
Right. Instead, people cheat only just enough to gain a little extra benefit while still allowing themselves to believe they are fundamentally honest people.
It's an internal balancing act. Does this mean our internal moral compass isn't actually a rigid needle pointing true north, but more like a rubber band?
A rubber band.
Yeah, like we stretch it and stretch it just to the absolute limit to get what we want, but we stop right before it snaps and we have to look in the mirror and admit we're the bad guy.
The rubber band analogy captures the exact mechanism at play here, which is cognitive dissonance. We have a powerful psychological need to maintain our self-image as good, honest members of society. If we steal a massive amount of cash, that rubber band snaps.
You can't ignore it anymore.
Exactly. We can no longer deny we are thieves. The cognitive dissonance is just too painful.
This applies to so many everyday behaviors. Like, it explains padding an expense report by just a few rupees for a coffee, or slightly exaggerating on a resume, or everyday workplace ethics. For example, most people would never dream of stealing a 100 rupee note out of the office petty cash box. It feels like a literal crime.
But taking a nice pen home from the supply closet.
Exactly. Taking cash violates the self-image immediately.
Yeah.
But a pen, the brain easily rationalizes that. You tell yourself, well, I work hard, the company owes me, everyone takes office supplies. It's just a pen.
The rubber band stretches, you gain the benefit of the pen, but your positive self-image remains completely intact. We are predictably irrational in the lengths we will go to protect our ego while still getting a little extra on the side.
Okay, so our brains are clearly riddled with these predictable bugs.
Yeah.
We fall for decoy pricing, we bypass logic for anything labeled free, we ruin friendships by introducing market norms, and we constantly stretch our moral rubber bands. How does Ariely actually deliver all this hard truth in the audiobook? Is it just hours of dry academic data?
Not at all. What makes Ariely's work so digestible is that it doesn't read like an economics paper. It feels much more like an extended 10-hour TED Talk. He uses very conversational narration, strong storytelling, and a lot of humor to explain these complex psychological mechanisms. It makes the underlying science incredibly accessible.
It definitely sounds like a must-listen for anyone who wants to understand their own mind. Though, looking at the critique of the material, if there is a flaw, it's that he's much better at diagnosing the disease than offering the cure.
That's true.
The book focuses heavily on understanding the behavior, but doesn't really give you a step-by-step action plan to fix it.
That is a fair critique of the book, definitely. But the practical utility of just understanding these concepts is immense. I mean, once you learn to recognize these patterns, you start seeing them everywhere. You understand the psychology behind the pricing strategies used on you, you can identify your own biases in your personal finances, and you can even utilize these concepts in career negotiations.
But I have to push back a little here. We've just spent all this time establishing that we are predictably irrational. Our brains are biologically hardwired this way by evolution. Does merely reading a book stop it?
Well,
Like if my brain has evolved to overvalue things I own because of loss aversion, just knowing about the endowment effect doesn't necessarily stop the feeling, does it? Is mere awareness really enough?
yeah. It doesn't stop the initial feeling, no. You will likely always feel that initial surge of irrationality. But consider the alternative. Because these forces, relativity, anchoring, the emotional pull of free sand, they're largely hidden beneath our conscious thought. Awareness is the absolute necessary first step.
Because you can't fight what you can't see.
Exactly. You cannot defend against a trap you cannot see. By understanding the patterns outlined in this research, you are shining a light on those hidden evolutionary forces. Once you see the strings pulling your decisions, you can finally start to consciously cut them.
Ah, I see.
You might still feel the emotional pull of the free item, but your logical brain can now step in, recognize the pattern, and say, wait, I know exactly what my brain is doing right now, and I don't actually need this.
That makes a lot of sense. It turns a subconscious reaction into a conscious choice. So, to wrap this all up, the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive is to take a hard look in the mirror. You like to believe you are a completely rational decision maker, objectively weighing the facts of your life. But the truth is, your choices are heavily influenced by context, by emotional triggers, and by hidden evolutionary biases you barely even notice.
But again, that isn't a reason to despair. Understanding these patterns, whether it's the power of free, the anchoring effect of arbitrary numbers, or the delicate clash of social and market norms, is the ultimate shortcut.
The shortcut to what?
It's the shortcut to making better decisions in your personal life, in your business strategies, and in your relationships. It allows you to anticipate your own errors and the errors of the people around you.
Which is an incredible advantage to have in life. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've talked a lot about how companies use these tricks, but think about the future. If our brains are this predictably irrational, if we are basically a collection of highly hackable psychological bugs, what happens when artificial intelligence, which is perfectly rational and designed to maximize profit, learns exactly how to exploit these specific human bugs at scale? Ask yourself, as technology gets better at reading our behavior, who is really making your decisions? Are you using pure logic, or are you just being predictably irrational?